When I got into the occult in my teens and my early 20s, this is like almost 20 years ago now, a bit more than 20 years, maybe 23, 24 years ago. The real thing was finding information, was finding quality books, it was finding trustworthy ideas and practices and techniques to work with. It was hard, and you really needed to search, you needed to really dig deep to find good stuff. Things have really changed. Now the issue is the abundance of information online and in published form. There are so many books and so many good books and so many ideas and so many good ideas and so many niche things that have developed over this last 5 or 10 years or so especially, that it really becomes an issue of figuring out what to focus on. And I myself struggle with this. There's so much new information about Solomonic magic and the grimoires and magic in general and occultism in general and divination in general coming out every day, that like there's a million bright shiny things trying to grab your attention at any given time, as well as a lot of crap. There's a lot of really bad information there too. So the situation is complicated by needing to separate the noise from the signal. And then also it's in a matter of being able to come to grips with any one thing and to be able to really get the value out of it, the transformative value that any practice or any idea will have on you that will be significant and useful. Because it's easy just to skip from idea to idea, or just to shop and to add more and more books, more and more crap into your practice and not really use any of it. Or if you do use it, it's in a very ADD kind of way where you jump from one thing to the next and you're never really getting anything substantial out of that, right? It's a bit like digging for a well or digging for water and digging, a few meters deep in 1,000 different places and never finding water in any one place, rather than just digging in one spot and going all the way down until you get water. It's the same problem that we face as spiritual practitioners, as occultists, as explorers of the mysteries of the universe, as it were, because this abundance of information is really like a labyrinth. So I wanted to give you a bit of how I deal with this. And I am voracious in the way that I read and consume new information. I love buying books. I love buying new tarot decks. I probably spend way too much money and time doing just that. But how I contain that, how I stop hoarding this stuff and not really using it, is that I always make sure that I have a central practice and a central technique in any one thing. And then I make that practice and that technique the focus, the foundation of my work. And I always stick to that one thing, even though I might sample other things and even though I might discover other things. This one thing becomes the main road, the main avenue that I follow. So for example, in my practice of reading the tarot, I always work with, although I've got, I think, a couple of thousand decks by this time, I always read for clients with the same deck. And I always use the same Lenormand deck, and I use the same set of tools. I might experiment with other things, but I stick to that one deck. Similarly, I have 1 or 2 spreads. Specifically, I like using Oswald Wirth's cross spread. I think it's sometimes called the French cross. It's a 5-card technique that was popularized by Oswald Wirth, and I think it was probably, I can't even remember if it was at the turn of the century, but anyway, it's an old spread. And I've used that spread and that technique for the last, I guess, 15 years or so. With every client, with every reading of my own, whenever the stakes are high, I work with that spread. And over time, it has allowed me to explore the depths of that 5-card spread, to see the inner mechanics, the deep structure, and it has over the last 15 years revealed to me all kinds of fascinating interactions, all kinds of brilliant ways of getting into the reading and ways of decoding certain kinds of cards, what certain cards mean in certain positions of that spread that is particular to that spread. So I've really been able to get as much value, as much depth out of that as possible, and that has really come as a result of sticking to that one spread, sticking to that one system of interpreting cards, and otherwise, which on the surface might seem like a simplistic thing, a 5-card spread, has opened up and shown me its depth. And the occult arts in general are like that. Any one technique has a real profundity to it. If it's a quality practice or a quality technique, it will have some profundity, some depth in it. And that profundity, that depth, that mystery will only reveal itself to you as you dedicate yourself to it, as you stick to that thing. And give it time to unfold, give it yourself time to experience it in its full capacity, which might not happen if you're going from thing to thing to thing to thing. It's not to say that I don't add other things to it. I might experiment with additional spreads and techniques, and in fact I always am experimenting, but there's this one core thing that I stick to, that I use as the basis for my work with the cards. And similarly, with my magical practice, my Solomonic practice, I have one system of evocation that I like to use and that I stick with, and I have other techniques, other ways of working that I've more or less committed myself to over the last 10, 15, 20 years, however long it's been that I've been working with that thing. And what it's allowed me to do is use that as a basis for my growth, and that really allows me to get the value of it, and not get trapped in a materialistic mindset of more. And it really is very materialistic, and it's superficial. It will not deliver results. That's why I sometimes speak to people who come to me for readings or for coaching, and they've been at it for years, but they have not had any traction. They've not seen any real results. They've not seen that transformation in themselves. And it's because they've gone from one thing to the next, changing as the fashion's changing as the trend's changing, without ever really coming to grips with any one thing. And what it's done is it's just given them the survey of what's available, and there's always more available, and that doesn't lead to anything significant. So my advice: pick a core practice, stick to it. If it's a ritual technique, develop that ritual technique. If it's a way of reading, stick to that one way of reading and use it consistently. Add other things to it. Experiment with other things, of course, but make sure that you have one thing that you are practicing, that you are growing, so that you can really get the value and the results that is potentially there for you. That only comes with persistence and dedication.